So this morning, Pastor Jeff is on his way to Spokane. Actually, I think he said he was going to beat us there before we actually got out of service this morning. But he's on his way to Spokane, Washington. Our general council, which is the top major authority of the Christian and Missionary Alliance, the denomination that we are a part of, they have their meetings every 2 years. And lots of board-type meetings, but then also sharpening and refreshment for pastors and their wives and families to be a part of. So that's where he's headed, to Spokane, Washington, and he'll be gone this week. But we have a special guest speaker this morning, Scott Bauer. Scott and his family have been a part of Community Heights Alliance Church for nearly 15 years, and he has been an elder on our board for the last 2 years. And so he's going to come and share with us, just keeping with the theme, did God really say that? And ask the question, what does God mean through all of that? And so Scott's going to come and share with us what God laid on his heart this morning. Scott, thanks for stepping up and being willing to come and to share God's word with us. So Scott Bauer, folks.
Thank you. So I'll tell you this, be careful when pastor calls, because you never know what's going to be on the other side of that call. So a couple of weeks ago, pastor gave me a call and just asked if I would speak, and I asked him what about, and he said, you know, we're in a time frame where we're getting questions that people want answered that may or may not be in the Bible. And I said, oh, great, I can do that. And so as I wrestled with what topic do I give, they sent me a few topics, and but one that continues to circulate around our house is, if God is good God, why do bad things happen? And before I jump into that, I want to backpedal just a second. I sit on the Fierce Faith Music Board, and the pastors have done a great job of promoting Fierce Faith Music Festival coming up on June 17th. But it's a time where, just in that last song, Not I, but Through Christ in Me, we have an opportunity to show that publicly on June 17th. Unspoken, nice band, Building 429, and a local band, Friday Night Fire, will all be performing. We'll be out in the Maytag grass area between Maytag and the DMAC Center. And so if you're somebody that does not like to go online and get tickets online, you can contact me and I can get you physical copies. Otherwise, the easier way to do it is just get a ticket online. But ticket prices do go up on the day of the event, so get your tickets now and join in an opportunity for corporate worship publicly in a public setting. And you never know if one of those bands will be loud enough that the people at Hazelig or Murph and Mary's might hear something and wander over and wonder what's going on, and we can get them over there as well. So join in that. A little bit about me before I jump into this. Like Bo said, we've been here just short of 15 years. I think we hit 15 years in July when we moved here. The weekend we moved here, we stepped foot into these doors, and we have been here ever since and thoroughly love this. And so I want to thank you guys for coming today. The weather is beautiful. There are many other things you could be doing on this Sunday morning when the weather is like it is. We haven't had a ton of days like this, and so thank you for being here. Thank you to the worship team for all they do. They don't get the acknowledgement they do, and I know some of them aren't playing today, but thank you, worship team, for all you do. Once again, if God is a good God, why do bad things happen? So when Pastor asked me to speak, I jump into this one, and then I've spent hours researching this and talking about, or thinking through and talking through this topic, and can I hit the redo button on that? Because I'm not sure I have the answers for this one. But it'll allow us an opportunity to unpack this, and it gives us an opportunity to really discuss this and figure out why. Figure out the why question. But if you look at the heading there, if God is a good God, why do bad things happen? And notice I asked the question, why do bad things happen? Most people phrase this question, and often this question is asked, why do bad things happen to good people? Because we want to justify that we're good, we're Christians, bad things shouldn't happen to me. But in reality, bad happens to everybody. Whether we deem them as good or bad people, bad happens to everybody. Bad is all around us. So bad things are constantly happening. We just want to justify that they shouldn't happen to us because we're a little bit better than somebody in our own perspective. This is one of life's toughest questions, and even after all the time and research people have done, the question may still be unanswered officially. I've listened to and watched videos from Billy Graham, R.C. Sproul, Rick Warren, Vadi Bakum, some of the great scholars. In the last couple of weeks, I've listened to and researched them, and I don't have an answer for you officially. But there's a lot of things we can learn through that research and a lot of things we can understand through that. There's lots of examples of what bad means. Everybody has their different levels of bad and how that impacts us and what that is. Some examples I'll throw out there. You may have recently lost a job, and you're asking, God, are you there? I'm currently walking through that situation right now, if I'm going to be transparent. Walking through that right now, lost a job, looking for a job. Not easy. A lot of lessons to be learned there. My kids are looking at me. I've taught them, trust God, put your trust in God, put your faith in God. And God's saying to me right now, are you giving your children an example of what I want you to do? How I want you to live and trust. How I want you to trust in me. Am I showing my kids that? I can say it, but is my example to them truly trusting in God? A few years ago, my oldest loves basketball, and senior this year in the 6th grade broke his hand in January of that season, so missed a good chunk of that basketball season. And I gave him all the cliche, all the things you're supposed to as a dad. Hey, you'll get stronger through this. Hey, learn while you're sitting on the bench, take it all in, do all of this, you'll become a better player because of this, you'll become stronger, did all the good dad talk you're supposed to do. And so he got through that, played baseball, did all of that. But then the next year comes around, looking forward to basketball, being able to play again. The next year comes around, and about the same time, within about a week or so of the year before, he breaks his hand again and out for basketball again. And as a dad, you're supposed to give him the message, hey, you're going to learn from this. And I'm like, but I just gave that one a year ago. So I looked at him, and I still remember, I looked at him and I said, Brody, I don't know why this happened, and all I can tell you is this sucks. And I said, I don't know what you're going to learn from this. I don't know. But I said, other kids are looking at your example and how you walk through this. Because they may be walking through something like this in the future. So how you respond to this is in the spotlight right now. And you need to be aware of that. Another example right now that we're walking through, and my wife and I just had this discussion, without a job, I'm not getting an income. And without an income, I'm tithing 10% of my income. What do I tithe? I don't have to tithe now. I'm not making any money. But God calls us to be faithful. And if I trust God's going to give me a job, do I need to also trust that I need to tithe what I want for that job? It's not easy. I'm going to tell you that right now. And I'm not standing up here because, I can do that. Because there's days we don't want to put that check in there. Because it's not easy. But God's asking for me to be an example and to be a light. We can take it to the next step. Cancer, disease, sickness, tragedy in a car accident, things like that. We've all experienced that in some capacity. Maybe somebody close to you hasn't died yet due to one of those situations. But I'm going to tell you, at some point in time, they probably will. And we ask ourselves, God, don't you care? Aren't you compassionate enough to help them avoid this? My wife lost her mother when she was a senior in high school. Probably some of the most critical and crucial years for sending someone off. Certainly those questions entered her mind at that stage. Why, God, why? Her dad was there in her life, but probably not as present of a father as you would want, especially as you're moving off to college and going to be on your own for the first time. Why did God allow this to happen? And notice I said, why did God allow this to happen? We'll unpack that a little bit more. I don't think God caused it to happen, but God allowed it to happen. My mom lost her battle with cancer about 2 years ago. About 10 years before that, maybe 8 years before that, my dad had a stroke, and he can't live on his own. My mom was his caretaker. He's come here. You wouldn't know that he had a stroke necessarily, but his short-term memory's gone. Those same why questions come up. Why, God? He needed somebody to take care of him. Now it's on us 3 kids to take care of him. You know, when you get all those cliche stuff, oh, God needed an angel, God needed this. Once again, I don't think God needed anything. Those things just happen in life. You probably know somebody that's addicted to drugs, is addicted to alcohol, addicted to pornography. And you're asking yourself, can't you stop this, God? Can't you intervene? One that really hits home to me when you hear it is you hear about sex slavery, these little kids sold into sex slavery. And you're sitting there, wow, really, God? Why don't you do something? You're going to let these little kids be sold into sex slavery. Why? I don't understand that. And I could go on with those examples, and I know you guys probably have your examples of your own that I didn't mention. Each of us have different levels of pain and hurt that have happened in our lives. And we ask that question, why? And I think the question of why is fair. But then we must unpack a little bit of how. How do we get through those moments? So when something often happens, we want to blame God. But in those very moments, we want to push him away because we want to blame him, are the same moments when God actually is on the very thing we need in that situation. He is the one who will comfort us and carry us through it all. And he's waiting for us with open arms to come running to him to help us through those moments. But what we need to understand is that if we truly believe God exists, which I feel like everybody here today probably truly feels God exists, otherwise you might not be here. We also must understand that if we believe God exists, we also believe that Satan exists. And as hard as God wants us to do good, and as much as God wants things to happen for the positive in our lives and be there for us and encourage us and do that, Satan doesn't want us to draw any closer to God. He wants to rip us apart from God and keep us from drawing any closer to him. And so he is a powerful force in himself. So picture this with me. I'm sitting at the park with my daughter. She's much younger than she is now. She's at the park, she's playing on the swings, running around, doing what she normally does or what a little kid does. And I'm sitting off to the side, probably socializing, actually probably on my phone doing something like that. If I'm gonna be honest, I'm probably looking at something. I hear her cry. She's running, she falls, she scrapes her knee, and she's crying. As a dad, I get up, I run over to her, I grab her, I pick her up. I hug her, I wipe her tears, I wipe the blood from her knee, and I comfort her. Now, if we think about that situation, was the pain she felt, or that was caused upon her, was that her fault? Nope. Maybe she was careless or clumsy, but typically no. Was it my fault as a dad? Nope. In her pain and confusion, she doesn't point her finger at me and say, Dad, why did you let this happen to me? She understands her dad loves her. She understands I love her. And that I want to help her. I want to bring good in that situation. And it's the same with us and God. Things happen to us that aren't all our fault. Things happen to us that aren't God's fault. And we can push him away and get angry, or we can let him bring good in the situation to let him pull us through our greatest struggles. So I'm here to tell you, bad things happen. And I don't have the answers for that. And I'm not sure anybody really has the answers for that. But what I do know is that God is good, and it's not his fault. God doesn't cause us to suffer, but he allows it to happen. So going back to Kate's mom, and cancer taking her life when Kate was a senior in high school, over the past few months, this really hits home to us because it was this time of year, right before she graduated. And as we're walking through a graduation ourselves right now with our oldest, we're hoping that the lessons we've taught him, the encouragement we've given him, are ready and he's taking hold of as he walks out the door here in a few months and goes off to college. And we're hoping that he will find his way and do good things. But in that hope and joy of sending him off, there's also part of us that says, I hope he still remembers our phone number. I hope he still calls us, and I hope he still needs us. So going back to Kate's, when she's in her biggest time of need and most critical stage in life, cancer took her. Now, And at those moments, when we need God the most, it was taken. And the question is fair. Why, God? Why? Why did you allow this to happen? So since those days of years ago, Kate has the opportunity to minister to many other ladies, young girls, middle-aged women, newly married women, older women that have lost their mother. Because there's never a good time to truly lose your mother if you're a woman. If you're a guy, either. I hated losing my mom 2 years ago. But as a woman, there's never a good time to lose your mother. But without the experiences Kate had in losing her mother and walking through that, she wouldn't have the same ministry opportunity to minister to these women in the same way. But because of her painful experience, she understands their pain. She understands what they're going through, and she can walk them through it. I remember shortly after Kate and I got married, my wife is the one of wisdom, I'll tell you that. I remember shortly after Kate and I got married, we were talking and sitting there, and a friend of ours had lost someone close. I don't remember the exact situation, but Kate had asked me if I'd reached out to them. And being the guy that I am, no, I hadn't, because you want to avoid those conversations. And Kate said, well, you need to. I'm like, well, I don't know what to say. And she correctly referred me back to a situation in her life when she was in high school dealing with her mother's death. She went back to school shortly after her mom had died. And of course, kids don't know what to say, so they avoid you. They walk the other way. And Kate quickly told me, she's like, it's not about what you say. They just want to know that you care, and saying anything. So through her loss, she was able to minister through me. I still didn't understand that impact like I do today, because I hadn't experienced loss. She had lost mom, dad, everybody in her mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, and I hadn't experienced the loss of any of my family members, mom, dad, or any of my 4 grandparents at that stage. I didn't understand how to walk through that and to walk through that. Unfortunately, now I have that experience. All 4 of my grandparents are gone, and my mom is gone. But what it's allowed me to do is shortly after my mom passed, an uncle of mine passed, and I've been able to reach out to one of my cousins through text and things like that. Not because I hurt so much that my uncle had passed, because I see him once a year, but I understand her pain. I understand the pain those first come about, and I can reach out during those and be able to minister to her. So Rick Warren wrote Purpose Driven Life, great author, great pastor, said in an interview or in a talk that I was listening to as I was researching this, your greatest ministry will likely come from your deepest hurt if you'll be honest to God, honest to yourself, and honest to share with others. Wow. There's a lot of if you're going to be honest in there. And what that creates is a little vulnerability in us, because we need to be honest with ourselves. We need to be honest with others and share, and we need to be honest with God. But one thing God does is pain causes growth. So the pain we deal with and the pain we walk through, probably on a daily basis in some cases, can cause the greatest growth in our life if we allow it to. C.S. Lewis said, God whispers to us in our pleasures and shouts to us in our pain. I have this picture standing there going through a troubling time or a difficult time, and God standing there with a megaphone saying, come to me. I want to hold you. I want to walk you through this. But in those moments, we often push him away instead of draw him close, and he's just screaming for us through this megaphone, come to me. Because God uses our pain to deepen our worship, and God uses our pain to deepen our fellowship. Think about that. Deepen our worship, meaning draw closer to him. Deepen our fellowship, rely on people around you. Reach out to people in our deepest pain. Reach out. Don't hide it. Going back up to Rick Warren's comment, if you'll be honest to God, honest to yourself, and honest to share it. Don't hold it in, share it. Others have walked through similar situations and want to be there for you. Remember, purpose does not prevent you from pain. We all grow through pain. I was just last night, as I was reviewing this and doing some things with this, I came across a video of the Boston Celtics head coach. And they asked him how his 48 hours had changed because they were down 3-0 in a series that they were favored to win big time. And they had just won the last 2 games, and now they were 3-2 and had a chance to maybe come back in the series. And there's a couple good things to state in there, and I'll just state one that kind of pertains to this a little bit. He said, nothing's really changed. He spoke of a situation where he came across some girls struggling with some very difficult situations, probably near-death situations, and they were joyous and celebrating. And then he quickly turned it to, everybody wants to thank God when the trophy's up in the air, when they've got first place, when they won their championships. Everybody's like, oh, thank God. If it wasn't for God, I could do this and all that, which is great. Give God the glory, 100%. But he said, are you faithful in the moments when it's not good? So in a moment where his job is potentially on the line, are you faithful to God in those moments? Romans 8:28 states, and we know that all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his plan. If we read that first line again, and we know that in all things God works for good. It doesn't say God's not going to create bad. It doesn't say, hey, in the good, God's going to. It says in all things, God is going to work for the good. As I was researching, I came across an illustration. And I like illustrations. They put a visual in my mind, and they help me work my way through things. And this guy was talking about how when he was dealing with the highs and lows in life, or the good and the bad in life, he used to refer to it as the mountaintops and the valleys. You have these mountaintops, you're up on top of the mountain, you're shouting to the world, hey, things are good, look at me, I'm riding this high. But when it's low, we ride the mountain down and we get in the valley and it's low and we want to be by ourselves and we don't want people to see us. And unlike the mountaintop where we can be seen, in the valleys we can't. But he thought about that example for a little while, and he quickly came to the realization that that's probably not what life really looks like. It's probably more like railroad tracks. Think about railroad tracks. They run parallel to each other at all times. Because if they don't, then we're going to lose the train somewhere. So they're running parallel. You've got the good track, things that are happening good in life, and you've got the bad track, things that are happening bad in our life. And along the way, there's always good happening, and there's always bad happening. So no matter how good things are in your life, there's always a bad thing you've got to be working through. And no matter how bad things are in your life, there's always something good to be thankful for. The real question becomes, when we're thinking about it that way as railroad tracks, which track are we focusing on? Are we focusing on the bad track and everything seems to be doom and gloom? Or are we focusing on the good track and helping us through the bad times by keeping our focus on the good? I think this illustration fits well. We experience those highs and lows, and we experience in most of them simultaneously with the other in some extent. So if we believe and we know there is good and bad, are you willing to go through pain so that others can experience God? Are you willing to go through pain so that others can experience God? I'd prefer not to go through pain. It'd be a lot easier. But am I willing to rejoice in the times of sorrow and use those experiences to minister for the good of God? Because they're going to happen. I could ask the question, has anybody in here not had some of those events happen to you? And unless you're like a year, like 2 weeks old, it probably has. Another example of this, if we look at John 11, this is where Mary and Martha are there with Lazarus, and Lazarus is sick and about to die. And Jesus is off far away. And he's human at this time. He's here on earth physically with them. So Mary and Martha send a message, and somebody delivers a message to Jesus and says, Lord, your dear friend is very sick. Jesus could have easily packed his stuff up, went to Bethany to be with Lazarus, his good friend, and healed him. At that stage in the Bible, we've heard of stories where he healed the blind, he's healed other people, he's done miraculous things. He could have easily traveled to Bethany and saved his good friend. But he chose to stay with his disciples. I'm paraphrasing a lot of this and jumping through it, and if you want the full story, go back and read John 11. There's a lot of takeaways in that story. But through that, Jesus, a few days later, says, okay, disciples, we're going to head to Bethany. We're going to go see Lazarus. And in that, he tells them Lazarus is asleep. And they said, oh, you're going to wake him? And he said, no, Lazarus is dead. So they go. And Mary and Martha are mourning. Lazarus has been in the grave for a few days now. And Jesus gets there. And Martha knows he's coming or gets word that he's coming and meets Jesus. And she asks one question when she sees him. I'm sure she asked a few, but one question she gets when she sees him. And she says, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died. Jesus comforts her and says, but he will rise again. And she says, yep, like everybody, they'll rise again. And he's like, no, he'll rise again. Jesus could have physically, like I said, Jesus could have physically been there and healed him. So after telling Martha this and after walking through this with Martha, he says, let's go talk to Mary. So Mary hears this. Mary leaves where she's at. The people assume she's leaving to go to the gravesite because she's mourning, she's crying, and so forth, like all of us do in our mourning. And when Jesus saw her weeping and saw the other people wailing with her, deep anger welled up in him. And he was deeply troubled. He asked, where have you put Lazarus? They said, come and see. And at that moment, some of the most powerful words in the Bible, in my opinion, happened. Jesus wept. He was human. He experienced the pain. He experienced the sorrow of the death of a good friend. And he wept. Probably like all of us, some of the weeping was because he understood the pain that Mary and Martha were going through. And some of it is he was experiencing his own pain and the loss of a friend. And the story goes, he ends up having Lazarus rise from the dead. But through this, what we see is that Jesus felt their pain, and Jesus had pain of his own. And then he chose to perform a miracle to display God's glory. So what can we take from this? Well, I truly believe one of God's biggest goals in life is to make me Christ-like. And if God's biggest goal, and that's his number one goal, I believe, is to make me Christ-like, then he's going to make me go through everything that Jesus went through. He put Jesus here on earth and had him go through the pain and the suffering that we went through. Not only that, he had him die on the cross. So fitting that we had Communion Sunday today when we're talking about this, because Jesus died on the cross. Malachi 3:3, probably a verse that doesn't get looked at a ton. If you're skipping pages in the Bible trying to find Malachi, you might skip right past it because it's a very small book in the Bible. There's a verse, Malachi 3:3. He will sit as a refiner and purifier of silver. He will purify the Levites and refine them like gold and silver. Then the Lord will have men who will bring offerings in righteousness. Great. What does that mean? There's a lot there, but what does it mean to sit as a refiner and purifier of silver? What does refining and purifying silver even look like? So this was a few years ago. I was looking at that, came across this verse, and started looking into some things. And there's another guy that had the same question. He posted some things on the internet. And so in his struggle with understanding how this verse applies or what the impact of this verse is, he decided he was going to go to a silversmith and learn the process of refining and purifying silver. I don't know if there's anybody in here that understands that process. I don't. I didn't do a little bit more through all of this, but so he sat there and he watched, and he just took it all in, and he was watching, and they do their thing, and the silversmith puts the silver in the fire, pulls the silver out, puts the silver in the fire, pulls it out, leaves it in the fire for a little while. And at some point in time, the guy that was trying to research this said, "Hey, can I ask you a question? How long do you leave that in the fire?" The silversmith pulled it out, looked at it, and said, until I see my image in it. I think that's what this verse is talking about. Until I see my image in it. God is going to refine us and purify us. And things are going to happen in our lives because he wants us to become Christ-like. And in order for us to become Christ-like, we have to go through the same things Christ went through. If he didn't stop them from happening to his own son and didn't stop the suffering he went through, why in the world would he stop them from happening to me? There's things I would do long for my kids, long before I do them for others, and Christ chose not to, or God chose not to with Christ. God will hold us in the fire until he sees our image. Not necessarily causing things to happen, because I don't believe God causes those things to happen. He allows them to happen, but I don't think he causes them to happen. So as you look at the cross here on Communion Sunday, the cross says one thing really clear. Life is really difficult at times as Christians. Really difficult. I can't look at my God. Remember, I can't look at my God and say, you don't know what it's like to deal with pain, with suffering, to watch a body fall into pieces, to have people that were supposed to be there for you take off, because he does. He understands all of that. He understands the pain we go through because he experienced pain here on earth. He understands the suffering. Can you imagine walking down the streets and being ridiculed as you walk down the streets? He understands that. As we watch somebody fight cancer or you name it, get in an accident and their body falls to pieces, he understands that as he died on the cross and took the lashes. To have people that were supposed to be there, his own disciples betrayed him. The people that were supposed to be closest to him betrayed him. He experienced all of that. So Jesus didn't promise us freedom from suffering, but he does promise us his presence in the midst of that suffering. I don't think he likes to see us suffer, just as he wept with Mary and Martha. I think he weeps when we are experiencing those pains. I think he's heartbroken as well. But remember this, he didn't suffer so that we don't have to. He suffered so that we know how to. He doesn't promise us that we won't suffer, but he gave us an example of how to. So when you call out to God, where are you? Where have you been? Where were you in this situation? We know exactly where he is. He is on the cross right next to you, saying, my God, my God, my God, why have you forsaken me? He said those words so that we don't have to. So when we want to blame God for everything, like why did cancer happen? Why did this person die in a car accident? Why did I lose my job? There's so many whys. One that comes to mind is, why are kids in Haiti? And I look to God and say, why are kids in Haiti starving to death? These kids are 2, 3, 4 years old, and they're starving to death. I don't understand that. I can't grasp that. I don't understand the pain that those kids are going through and those parents are going through, and the decisions that have to be made. But I think God may be looking down, when I'm asking that question, I think God may be looking down at me from heaven and saying, you know what? I was just about to ask you the exact same question. Why are these kids suffering? What have you done? Smacks us in the face just a little bit. Because are we doing what we need to do? So in my research and time spent on trying to figure out an answer to this, which I never came up to, Dr. Vadi Bakum, if you've never listened to him, he's one of those very energetic, very charismatic pastors, has a lot of enthusiasm when he's on there. I listened to an interview with him, and he asked, he goes into schools that give you ministry degrees, and he'll be a guest speaker at those, and so he'll go to those, and inevitably he has a student come up to him and says, hey, if God is omnipresent, omnipotent, sovereign, all of these things, and asks this big elaborate question, he'll stop him and he says, hey, you just finished first year theology, right? And they're like, well, how do you know that? Well, because if you hadn't finished first year theology, you would have just simply asked, why do bad things happen to good people? And he says, So then they come back to him and they say, so why does this happen? You've done research, you know this, why does this happen? And he pushes back on them a little bit. And he says, I'm not going to answer that question until you ask the question the right way. And they sit there and they think, and they're like, what do you mean the correct way? Vadi flips the script on this whole thing. Vadi then quickly states, if I went to bed last night knowing all the sin I had done that day, knowing all the problems I've created, knowing all the evil in this world, and God is who he is, and God is a good God, why did I wake up this morning? We wake up because God is full of goodness. We wake up because God is a good God. And so it's interesting to think the other way. Why we often get caught and stalled out in the bad happening in our lives and forget about all the good that God is creating in our lives. Because the bad seems to be bigger than the good. But in reality, good is happening around us all over the place. And we need to focus on that. And we need to put our attention to that. God is full of goodness. But we often miss the goodness because we're stalling out in the dark times. So, to recap, God is not a punitive God. He is a powerful God. God is not mean, he is mighty. God is not far away, he is close, right beside us, and feels our pain. Jesus promises to be with us when we suffer because he suffered. He'll be right alongside of us, and he understands it. Pain can have a greater purpose and cause growth if we trust God. So remember this. God didn't suffer so we don't have to. He suffered so that we know how to. Let's pray. Father, I don't have everything. I don't understand everything that has happened in my life. I know it is not your fault. God, I know you love me and I know you love my family and friends. You said in your word, for I know the plans I have for you. They are plans for good and not for disaster, to give you future and a hope. I trust those words, Lord. I trust you, Lord, and I trust you with my future. Even when difficult things come my way, I will run to you and lean on you for comfort. Through my pain, you will provide growth. Let us look for ways to use these situations for your good. Let us look at what we can do to help others and to minister to others. So please be with us as we go on our way today. Keep everyone safe. May they enjoy this beautiful day you've provided for us. And may you bless each and every one of them and provide comfort in times of challenge. In Jesus' name, amen.